Dinosaurs are not the slow, sluggish, dumb creatures that we once thought to be. Our view of extinct species has drastically changed over the past decades, and even more so since we now know that birds are descendants of dinosaurs, which means they are way more dynamic than we thought. Even 10 years ago we had no idea dragon-like dinos were around. More on that on my Yichi video, you won't be disappointed. These species were once very lively, with complex behaviors, social interactions, and just simply alive. And to put things even more in perspective, a T-Rex is closer in time to GTA 6 than a Stegosaurus, so that's always something to keep in mind.
I am a Stegosaurus!
Today, let me introduce you to the equivalent of the Cretaceous buffalo, a dinosaur that lived its life in herds in the plains of northwestern America and which shed new light on the evolution and lifestyle of its family. Hey pals, how are you doing? Do you like dinosaurs? I like dinosaurs, so let's talk about dinosaurs, because what else would we talk about? I'm Pal, and today let me introduce you to Einiosaurus.
Hello!
This week we're getting back to our herbivorous friends. I've got some interesting suggestions from you guys, but many were about Chinese theropods, which are definitely cool and would deserve several videos, but I wanted to stray off China for a moment since I've covered a couple of dinosaurs from this region already. But be sure I'm taking them into account and they're in my to-do list. Within dinos, there's still a big family that I haven't tackled yet, but that has some of the most iconic and amazing ones, the ceratopsian family. Ceratopsians, otherwise known as horned dinosaurs, don't really need an introduction. You probably all know what a triceratops looks like, thanks to Jurassic Park. But today, let me start off with one of his lesser-known cousins, Einiosaurus. He was found by Jack Horner in 1985, and more fossils of it came later in various expeditions in the late 80s. You might have already heard of Jack Horner. He is a very prolific and famous paleontologist, for both good and less good reasons, mostly known to the general audience as an advisor for the Jurassic Park franchise, or his work on the dinosaur growth and the Chickenosaurus project.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Ainio has been found in the upper part of the Two Medicine Formation, a locality covering northwestern Montana and also southern Alberta, Canada, roughly ranging from 82 to 74 million years ago, and located near the western interior seaway, when North America was still vertically divided in two by this very large body of water. This formation was deposited in a seasonal, semi-arid climate in the rain shadows area of the Cordilleran Highlands and corresponded to an inland habitat. Einiosaurus has exclusively been found in the Montana part so far, dating to the mid to late Companion stage of the late Cretaceous period, about 74.5 million years ago, in a time where dinosaurs underwent a major radiation in this area, especially within Hadrosaur and Ceratopsian families. Just as a side note, it's important to observe that the preservation rates of rocks from the Companion is higher than older ones, which partially explains why we find way more fossils in this time. But an in-depth explanation on this would require a full video on its own, so back to Ainio for now. Other fossils found with Ainio include freshwater bivalves and gastropods, which imply that his bones were deposited in a shallow lake environment. Contemporaneous dinosaurs that lived alongside or close to Einiosaurus include the basal ornithopod Orodromeus and hadrosaurids such as Hypacrosaurus, Maiasaura, and Prosaurolophus. There were also some of his horned cousins like the Centrosaurians Styracosaurus and Stellasaurus, or the Leptoceratopsid Seracinops. The formation also hosted some ankylosaurs such as Edmontonia and Euplocephalus, as well as theropods like the Tyrannosaurid Daspletosaurus, which appears to have been a specialist of preying on ceratopsians, or smaller ones like Bambiraptor, Chirostenostes, Troodon, and Avisaurus. The name Einiosaurus means bison lizard.
I said beep beep, I'm a sheep.
However, the first half, Aini, doesn't come from Latin or Greek as is often the case in dinosaur names.
You should hear a 4-year-old try to say Archaeornithomimus.
We should hear you try to say it.
But is a term coming from the Blackfeet Indian population, meaning bison, for the fact that they seem to live in big herds and have a complex mode of life, at a time where dinosaurs were still mostly viewed as sluggish, slow, simple-minded, glorified big lizards by a lot of people, at least concerning herbivorous dinosaurs. The species name, procurvicornis, refers to his nasal horn, which is curved forward. In 1995, Sampson only described the skull, not the postcranial material, the parts behind the skull. This is mainly because in the family of Einiosaurus, the postcranial skeleton is very conservative, meaning that it differs only slightly among species. During the various expeditions I talked about earlier, around 15 individuals across hundreds of bones and varying ages were found, with 3 adult skulls that can tell us about how they would look like at full growth. As far as ceratopsians go, Einiosaurus is on the small end of the spectrum.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
With an estimated body length of 4 to 5 meters, including a 1.5 meter skull, and being around 2 meters high, with a weight of around 1.3 tons. He is generally as large as Ankylosaurus, another closely related centrosaur very similar to Einiosaurus, found in layers of the same age although built a little less robust. So I've talked about Einiosaurus family, centrosaurians and stuff like that. But what exactly am I talking about? Well, there are 2 main families within horned dinosaurs: centrosaurs and chasmosaurs. The key difference resides in basically which horns are bigger. If the eyebrow horns are bigger, it's a chasmosaur. If the nose horn is bigger, it's a centrosaur. So, for example, the most famous ceratopsian, Triceratops, is a chasmosaur. However, there are notable exceptions to this eyebrow rule, such as in Lokiceratops, for example, a centrosaur that's just been published earlier this year and has very well developed brow horns, as is the case for most centrosaurs that are older than Einiosaurus, closer to the point in time where they diverged from chasmosaurs. Centrosaurs also usually show very ornamented, spiky frills, like the one of Styracosaurus, for example, who's definitely the most metal of horned dinosaurs. In 2010, Einiosaurus was tentatively assigned to Centrosaurus, but this has found no consensus in the community and the name Einiosaurus remains the one used to this day. Ceratopsian phylogeny, and by extension Centrosaur phylogeny, is hard. Most of the time we rely on differences of the frills and how spiky, bumpy, ornamented they are. But this can widely differ not only between species, but also within species, with how an individual changes over time and age, which makes it even harder. Einio is considered to be mildly derived within centrosaurs, and marks the beginning of the bump-shaped nasal horn ceratopsians, right before Ankylosaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus. Most of the centrosaur lineage is actually considered as an anagenetic sequence, which is an evolutionary line where one species appears and disappears into the next one, etc. They seem to gradually evolve into each other in terms of morphology without overlapping in time, which further supports this theory. So Einiosaurus would consist of the middle ground between the older Rubeosaurus and Styracosaurus and the younger Ankylosaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus, with a nasal horn in the middle stage between being a horn and being a bump, and its frill being still quite pointy but starting to shorten and deflect laterally. Besides being a middle ground between these species, the nasal horn of Einio still presents unusual characteristics. The nasal horn is initially separated in 2 at its base, which fuse from the tip downwards and join into a single structure on the midline. In the subadult stage, you can still see the suture, the fusing line of the 2 halves, which is how we know how it develops while aging. Indeed, in younger individuals, the horn is not yet fully bent and starts as small and straight, which led to confusion when early expedition found these individuals and attributed them to different species before recognizing they were representing early stages of life of Einiosaurus. The supraorbital, or eyebrow, horns, as far as they are present, are low and rounded. These brow horns were getting even more similar to bumps than actual horns. Similarly to the nasal horn, the eyebrow bumps of Einiosaurus seem to start off as pointy, before gradually being absorbed and getting smoothened over time.
What did you do?
I shaved my eyebrows.
Why did you do that?
I don't...
It also has a pair of big spikes coming out of the posterior most part of its frill, kinda like Diabloceratops but not as much. The fact that Einiosaurus started to present less spiky ornamentations than his older cousins is probably correlated to the herding lifestyle I talked about earlier, where they could rely on the strength of numbers of the herd and not necessarily on individual weaponry. This mode of life seems to be shared by other centrosaur species as well, but doesn't seem to be the case with most Casplosaurs, which are usually found one isolated specimen at a time.
Meow, meow, I'm a cow. I said meow, meow, I'm a cow.
Even though this is not a definite proof of an isolated mode of life. A notable exception is Casplosaurus itself, who's been found in abundant numbers in a single bone bed, suggesting a herding lifestyle as well. So since it already has a good defense mechanism with the herding, Einio's nasal horn might have been used as display, as a specialized tool to forage for food, or for intraspecific disputes. In 2009, Hieronymus published 2 papers supporting a fighting role of the nasal horn, shifting from long and pointy to dense and bumpy, similar to the bony frontal bus of the musk ox. He also noted that the more combative the animals are with each other, the more deflected and curved the points of the horns become, like the horns of bisons or bulls, or even in birds like hornbills. This further supports the herd lifestyle with regular headbutting and fights to settle for the herd king, basically. Despite its weird looks and not being especially well known compared to Triceratops, Einio has actually appeared in quite a few media so far, such as Dinosaur Planet, Dinosaur Train, Jurassic World Alive, or Fossil Fighters. And hopefully in more stuff to come if we're lucky. With its huge nose, Einiosaurus is basically living Voldemort's dream at this point. Good for him. Anyway, that's it guys, no more Einio for you. If you like this dino bison, you'll definitely like the Iguanodont Hypolurdosaurus or the little Ankylosaur submarine Liaoningosaurus, both of which I've covered on my channel right here for you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider to share, leave a like and subscribe. That was the very first horned dinosaur I've covered, but definitely won't be the last. Anyway, I'm gonna bounce, thank you very much for watching, and keep paleo into laughing. I'll see you around. See you, pals.